I want to tell you a story about Boston, Massachusetts. I started doing stand-up comedy there, and it is the place to learn stand-up because it's not, in Boston, you don't perform for the crowd, you perform against the crowd. There's a winner and there's a loser. And when you first start coming up, it's like you realize very quickly, it's saloon comedy, and it's guys from Southie. They go, hey, Sully, Fitzy, what are you doing tonight, kid? Let's go downtown, heckle some queers. Then we'll go down and beat up some colored kids. Come on, guy. So they come out to these clubs, and the comics are, you know, these are badass dudes, and there was a lot of drugs, and there was a club called Stitches Comedy Club, and the comedians used to sit at the bar and do coke while they watched each other. They'd get paid $100 cash, they would immediately hand it to a guy would give them an envelope of coke, and they'd chop it up, and the club told them they could no longer do coke at the bar, and they had a strike for 4 days. The comedians went on strike until they were allowed to snort cocaine at the bar. And they had a guy, this one guy named Tommy, like the best comedian I've ever seen, this guy out of Boston. I can't say his last name for legal reasons, because this next story involves him perhaps committing a felony. He was on stage, and some wise ass from Southie, he goes back and forth with him. Guy throws a bottle at Tommy. Cops are in the back of the club because the cops would hang out at Stitches, and so would the prostitutes because it was in the red light district. So the back of the room was cops who were pretty much on the take. The mob owned the place, and so these cops happen to be in the back, and they grab the guy who threw the bottle, and they take him out. And I'm just thinking, they are throwing a beating on this dude right now. But then Tommy gets off stage, and they go, yeah, Tommy, come with us, guy. And they take him around the corner, and the guy is handcuffed to a chair, and they go, take a couple rips at him. There you go. And Tommy just lights this dude up, chest, stomach. And they go, yeah, that felt pretty good, thanks. Now I'll go do a couple lines off the bar and relax. So the first time I ever did stand-up comedy was at Stitches at this thing called Sunday Nights, Amateur Night, and they called it Comedy Hell. That literally would be written on the marquee, Comedy Hell. And it was hosted by a guy named George McDonald. And he would start the show off by saying, welcome to Comedy Hell, where the dreams of a handful of road comics can soar as high as the lights on Broadway or crash and burn in that fiery pit known only as Comedy Hell. And I go up, and I remember my first time I followed a guy out of Providence who was dressed as a clam. And he sang Manish Boy, I'm a Man. But it was I'm a clam, get it? Because he was dressed, I don't know if he mentioned he was dressed as a clam. And he kills, destroys the place, like, ah! And I'm in the back going like, holy shit, I have no clam outfit, I'm fucked. And so I go up on stage and I tank it. I am eating it. And it's going so poorly, I'm between jokes, and I overhear a woman in the front row say to her husband, the poor bastard. It was worse than being yelled at because she didn't think I'd hear it. And so I work this club and I become a regular, and then I come in one Sunday night, and there's a Jewish singles night that's in the club. So these rich kids from Boston have got the room for the night, and so the room is filled with these kids, and then there's one table for four up front with only one person at it, and he's heckling everybody. And it turns out that he's this guy from the Israeli army who's a cab driver, and he heard Jewish singles night and thought, I am real Jew! They will love me! It's like, no. They love the Jewish guy, not the Jew guy. They want the guy, the pre-med Jew guy. And so he's heckling everybody, but here's the thing, he's good. He's like a heckling savant. He goes inside people's heads and he breaks them down. There's a girl on stage and she's bombing, and he goes to her, you have loneliness in your eyes. And another guy gets up and he says to this other guy, you lack basic confidence. You can't come back from that. Once you're told that, it only gets worse as you try to say, no, I do have confidence. And so I'm watching this and I'm like, shit, but what I've learned from watching Boston comedy is you fight for that space. You don't give that shit away. So I'm ready, and I go on. I'm 3 minutes into my act, and he goes, you are man. Like I'm a superhero, like I should have an F on my chest and leap over dicks and so... And it does make you think, all right, if he was so on the money on these other guys, is that what people think about me? That I'm a man? And I'm angry, but I'm angry at myself. Maybe I should have, whatever. So now he calls me this, and so then I just go right after him. I go, all right, pal, you want to get in my head? How about I get in yours? I go, you, this is the worst thing you can say to a Jewish person. You are a bad Jew. You left Israel. And he says to me, he looks at me and he says, nothing more. I said, really? Nothing more? I go, I want you to think about this. Every time you're driving your cab down Comm Ave and some ugly American gives the Heil Hitler sign, you pull over and you give them a ride. And the flames come out of his eyes, and he just jumps up on stage, fist clenched, comes straight at me, and so I've got the microphone, and it's like this kind of wire mesh, but I don't know if you remember back in the 90s, it was big steel. It was like a Game of Thrones weapon. And so I just take it, and I crack him across the forehead, and he is bleeding all over his face, and the audience is like, what the fuck is happening? And then he comes at me, but now he's this stocky dude from the Israeli army, and he gets me into a headlock and does some Krav Maga shit, turns me around, and now my ass is towards the audience, and they just see him pummeling me while my ass goes in the air, and then he gets me and then he starts spinning me like a helicopter. My legs are flopping around the front row. Tables are going down. Drinks are smashed. I'm screaming. Crowd screaming. Bouncers they're out back smoking a joint. So it takes about 3 minutes of beating before finally these guys come on stage and they grab this guy whose name was Simca, by the way. I remember his name was Simca because I remember telling him that was the name of the village idiot in Woody Allen's movie Love and Death. So they grab Simca and they throw him out of the club, and I'm standing next to the stage and my neck is on fire, and the club owner comes over to me and he goes like this. He goes, all right, Fitzsimmons, you got 5 minutes left. So the MC, the show is now stopped. The MC then reintroduces me. And I walk up on stage and I get up there and the crowd jumps on its feet, my first standing ovation of my life. Because this is Boston. They'd rather see a fight than a comedy show any night of the week. So they calm down and I just look around the crowd and I go, all right, who's next? All right, you guys have been great. Thank you very much.